This meeting is being recorded and/or transcribed.
Okay, I have 2:30 on the dot. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Motorist Modernization Phase 2 Advisory Board meeting for the month of May. I'd like to remind everyone that this public meeting is recorded. We will start today with roll call. Stephen?
Good afternoon. Yes, here.
Thank you. Lieutenant Britt?
Good afternoon. I'm here.
Diane?
Yes, good afternoon.
Jay?
I'm here.
Steve Burtz?
I'm here.
Lisa?
I'm here.
Sherry?
I am here.
I am here.
Sergeant Derek Joseph?
I'm here.
All right, we got a full house today. Thank you all for attending today. Next on the agenda, we will provide a review of the last meeting minutes. Coral, are you on?
I am, Kristen. Good afternoon, everybody. Our last meeting was held on April 20th. You can see that the meeting was called to order at 2:30 and the members who attended. The meeting minutes from March 9th were reviewed and approved. There was no stakeholder outreach update during the meeting. Janice Timmons provided a financial review for Phase 1 and Phase 2. Nathan Johnson provided a project update for Phase 2, followed by Andrea Powell regarding My DMV Portal Fleet, Scott Tomaszewski regarding the IFTA IRP team, and some important activities and key dates. Joe Weldon provided an update on the Florida Smart ID team, along with some risk and issues regarding the team. And Ian provided an update on the ECM team. Coral Griggs provided a communications update regarding the Florida Smart ID internal pilot. There were no questions or concerns during the meeting, and the meeting was adjourned at 2:55. And on page 4, you can see the meeting packet that was handed out prior to the meeting.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments, or corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So
I
moved.
see your lips moving, Lisa. I'm sorry? Was that Sherry?
Yes, motion to approve by Terry.
Thank you. Is there a
I'll
second?
second. This is
Thank you,
Jay.
Jay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you. Opposed, same sign. All right, we'll mark these as approved. Next on the agenda, we'll have an IVNV update from Ernst & Young. Greg, are you on the line? Greg, are you on the line for EY? Okay, we will skip that item. Oh, looks like he's joining now. Hi, Greg. Joined just in time.
Hi, Kristen.
Thank you. Will you provide us an IVNV update, please?
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. So this is the IVNV update. If you can please go to the next slide. So a quick summary. The overall status is amber of the project. There is one open deficiency and that is related to a lack of an integrated resource pool. We are tracking that the project is within the schedule performance thresholds, but the SPI that we're tracking has been steady and not improving, still showing consistently late based on the most recent baseline. The project is within cost performance thresholds, and that continues to hold steady. And as I mentioned earlier, the project continues to track behind schedule, 14.9 days late. Next slide, please. This shows the overall risk state of the project. We have one facet noted as amber, and that is the human resource management facet of P4. This is related to the open deficiency that we're currently tracking related to the shared resources across the project. Next slide, please. This is our chart that we show the tracking of the schedule performance of the project. And as you see, since the most recent baseline, it has maintained a steady of around 15 days late. Next slide. And the overall summary of our IVNV findings, there were 4 findings that were noted in October-November time period. 3 of those findings have been resolved and closed, and I discussed the one remaining open finding that we continue to track. And that is the IVNV presentation for this month. I'm happy to take any questions. Otherwise, I can hand it back to Kristen.
Any questions for Greg? All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
We don't have a stakeholder outreach update today, so I will skip over that item in the agenda. Moving right along, we will move into the financial update. Janice?
Hi, everyone. This financial update is as of the end of April. And I always like to show phase 1, even though we are at the end of that. Everyone's excited. We are statewide now, and it hasn't changed, which is good. So 37.3 was our final number, and those were our total actuals: 32 in contracted services, 2.5 in IVNV, 1.7 in expense, and 64,000 in OCO. And for phase 2, our LBR requests, as you can see, did change a little bit. For 2021, we stayed consistent at 9.87. For 21-22, we did go up though. We went up to 10.496. And we are expecting those numbers to go up for 22-23 and 23-24 for a total LBR request for this project of 59.9. The reason why next year went up a little bit is for the legislature this year, they did request that we hold back some funds and revert some funds, which those final numbers will be calculated by the end of June. Those funds will be rolled over into next year. And so as we revert funds for this year and roll them over into next year, that increased our funding for next year. So our phase 2 total budget, this will also change next month. Our contracted service number will bump up a little bit. Expenses will drop. OCO will actually turn into expenses, and IVNV will remain the same. You can see our numbers are pretty consistent across the board. April, May, and June contracted services is where most of our money is spent. So those numbers for contracted services will continue to increase as we expend the remaining funds in the last quarter of the fiscal year. And our budget versus actuals fiscal year to date is still showing 9.8. Month to date is 6.3 in budget, and actuals to date is 6.3 with a 0% variance. And right now our remaining funds are showing 3.5. So does anyone have any questions? I know I go through that pretty quick, but it's pretty straightforward.
All right, thank you, Janice. Next up, we'll have the project updates. Nathan, are you on to kick us off?
I am. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So here we have the stoplight report, and this stoplight report has all of the teams on a single page. And the way that we have this laid out is for each team, we're showing the current milestone that they're working on, the next milestone, as well as the full backlog. So for Team A, the titles and registration issuance team, they're continuing to focus on finishing up their milestone C functionality, which is the original registration. As of the time when these stats were pulled, they had 16 plus 4, so 20 to finish development requirements, and then 7 that are in testing. And once they finish that, they'll be pivoting to work on milestone D functionality, which is additional title and registration issuance transactions. At the end of milestone C, what Team A will have completed is all the core module for the motor vehicle issuance module within the Orion system for searching on customers, inquiring, pulling up summaries, and being able to launch transactions, and the complete original title transaction and original registration transaction. So the next transactions in the backlog will reuse that functionality to do the additional transactions that are currently being done in the Frivis system. So the team continues to do requirement refinement, which is reviewing those requirements to make sure that they're ready to work, and they have a good backlog of ready to work stories to pull from as they look at those milestone D user stories and transactions, and they'll continue to do that. So moving down for the globals team, they're actually working on milestone E functionality. They finished milestone D, which is some administrative and initial inventory features. Milestone E is the balance of the inventory related features. So they're focused on the inventory subsystem for the Orion application. That's a milestone E, and then milestone F starts some additional functionality as well. They have not started on milestone F yet. The enterprise team on the bottom left supports the other teams. What they're working on right now is actually helping out with the finalize functionality for the registration, which is actually updating the database and actually doing the issuance for registration. And they're also helping on the electronic content management system project as well. Okay, in the top right, we've got the portal team. Do we have Andrea to talk about the portal team?
Yes, Nathan. The portal team, the testing team is in sprint 19, and they're continuing to work on the milestone C stories. All development is complete, and the team is 50% remaining on the ready to test stories, which is why they're in the red, and they're testing the MV records request functionality. The team is continuing to review the estimates of completing the testing for the remaining milestone C stories, so we should get a better idea of when we should complete milestone C testing. The development team is in sprint 19, and they're refining and developing milestone D stories, and with 80% not started. The proto team has been asked to participate in the requirements gathering for the state-to-state project, which is an assumption that we will have an impact on the portal backlog. The risk, we reported a risk, and the risk will be closed. The risk is closed. That was due to the unplanned departure of one of the SEU managers, and that manager has been replaced with Sherry McDuffie. Any questions for Portal Fleet? Thank you.
Okay, thanks. This stoplight also has IFTA IRP and Florida Smart ID. And I apologize, I've been out of the office until recently. Do we have the PowerPoint slides for those? Okay. I'll point out really quickly on the IFTA IRP on the stoplight, the current milestones are in green, but we have a couple of items in yellow and red as we chase down some business design related questions for some of those future milestones. So I'll let Scott talk through those.
Thank you, Nathan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Just to give you an update for IFTA IRP, we're currently working on milestone B, sprint 5. We started May 5th. We continue to work with the IRP and audit designs and requirements for audit with Celtic. In addition, we started working on the endpoints because if you recall, we're trying to get all the endpoints to Celtic so they can continue their or initiate their configuration development. The application programming interface for the test environment, we're working on that with them this sprint, and also connecting the Orion backend to that test environment. Working with the shopping cart endpoint, the IFTA customer update, and CRS void payment. That's the actual work we're working on right now. We're still doing some design with them. There's no program risk or issues that we're tracking at this moment. We've got, if you look at the business actions, we're showing red as there are 2 PVD deliverables currently overdue. Our business and SMEs product owners have probably about 7 comments or observations to kind of work out, suss out. But you'll notice that we've approved the deliverable 11 COT software configuration design IRP that was due in April. Finally got that signed off and approved. So we're trending with 2 items that are still on our radar. The Orion interface, which is critical. If you recall, last month we opened and closed a program risk, but until we actually get the audit PVD, the enterprise PVD completed, this item will be tied to those 2. So we're working hard and quickly to address those PVDs in order for us to say the system specs between the 2 systems are good. You notice that in May, we've got finalized IRP interface design spec. That's what we're working with now. And then, of course, the audit JAD sessions were targeted towards the end of next week, but with the amount of details and insight that we're reviewing with the business owners, we are looking at the end of May. So we're cutting that one close, but we're kind of working to get that resolved. You'll notice Orion integration showing yellow on your slide and my slide too, because that Orion integration spec document has to be signed off before we truly could say we're ready to work on a common ground with Celtic. So we're working diligently, finding time with them to do that, resolve that. And then, of course, you'll notice on the program slide, you saw 220 some odd stories. Those are just the ones for IFTA. You're seeing on our slide the 559 because we wanted to, truth in lending, let everybody know that there's potentially that many stories for IRP, the interface components, IFTA, and audit. Most of those, now I know that's a lot of stories and we're only showing a couple endpoints as we were developing. Most of those stories are going to be passed through testing. So once Celtic's system is up and available, our SEU members will pick those up and kind of test them. In addition, several of those stories may be archived because they don't line up with the requirements validation. So we will have a final count June, July timeframe when we close out our audit JOD sessions. And of course, the only other item that we are tracking is as Celtic needs deployments, our department staff is there to allow those deployments to be pushed and made available to them. So with that said, is there any questions or comments from the IFTA update? If not, back to you, Nathan.
Okay, thanks. Next, we have Florida Smart ID. I think Joe is out. Is Ian going to talk to Smart ID?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
Okay, go ahead. Thanks.
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. So Florida Smart ID, we are still tracking late for UAT, and we are also drafting campaign requests for screen updates that was requested by Terry Rhodes, and we are having our phase 2 kickoff meeting that will be scheduled on the 13th of May for next week. And we are currently also tracking a few risk and issues. Of course, there's a risk 83 for FSID support. We've received a support maintenance plans for the CSP solution from Thales that we are reviewing, providing answers back, and they've also provided us a plan for the mobile application as well that we are reviewing. And as I mentioned, for risk 93, the screen changes, those have been submitted. So we're just waiting for those approvals to go through. And then of course, there's the of course, issue 3429, of course, with the realized late UAT. So right now we are just continuing to work through the bugs and defects that are in the list, and so these will be closed out once the UAT has been completed. Are there any other questions for FSID as of now? Okay. Back to you, Nathan. I guess we'll jump to ECM.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. So for enterprise content management, right now we are in testing phase. We currently are tracking late with UAT just due to some issues with data within a test system. We revised our test plan to address that. We're tracking late by a couple weeks, and we are continuing to move forward and looking at ways to both streamline the task and ensure that we can stay on track and hit a reasonable go live date. And the team is just currently working with the third-party provider to continue the integration process and conversion process as we look forward as well into the phase 2 effort with ECM. Any questions? All right, thank you. Nathan, back to you.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for overall project status updates?
All right, thank you. Last on the agenda, we do not have a communications update today. I believe that's correct, Coral. Shake your head, yes. Okay. All right. So I'd like to open the floor. Are there any questions, comments from advisory board members or the general public? Okay, hearing none, we will adjourn today's meeting and see you next month. Thank you all very much.